Hezbollah announces carrying out 9 operations against Israel along the Lebanese border. Egypt's foreign minister discusses the current escalating tensions with Lebanon's parliament speaker. And the Israeli army urges displaced people in Jabalia camp to evacuate. It's 8 p.m. Cairo local time, and you are now watching Q News. Let's start our bulletin with the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Hezbollah has announced that it has carried out 9 operations against Israeli military positions along the Lebanese border during the night. Hezbollah stated that it carried out 25 operations yesterday, responding to attempts by the Israeli army to advance by targeting its bases in northern Israel. Hezbollah said to have intercepted an Israeli drone, forcing it to leave Lebanese airspace. Additionally, Hezbollah reported targeting an Israeli artillery position in Odm with a rocket barrage, as well as striking the Kiryat Shmona military base south of Haifa with specialized rocket strike. The Israeli occupation army has released a video claiming that it shows strikes against dozens of facilities used by Hezbollah in Lebanon. According to the Israeli military, these strikes targeted areas in Beirut, southern Lebanon, and deep within the Lebanese territory. Hezbollah has not yet commented on the situation. Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz has stated that Tel Aviv will continue its operations against Iran, asserting that actions against Tehran will persist until its collapse. He further warned that Hezbollah's rockets aimed at Israel will come at a significant cost. The Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman has announced that Iran has formally written to the UN nuclear watchdog, raising concerns about Israeli threats to strike its nuclear energy sites. The statement comes after Israel vowed to retaliate against Iran following a missile attack on October the 1st, prompting speculation that Iranian nuclear facilities could be targeted. Last week, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office indicated that while Israel would consider the views of its key ally, the United States, it would ultimately act in its own national interest regarding Iran's actions.
مدیر کل آژانس بین‌المللی انرژی هسته‌ای ارسال شده، اما این جزو کارهای پایه‌ای وزارت خارجه است و ما مطمئناً در سطوح مختلف پیگیری
The death toll from Israeli airstrikes on Lebanon amid the Israeli-Hezbollah conflict has surpassed 2,460, with injuries reported at over 11,530. The Lebanese Health Ministry confirmed that 16 people were killed and 59 others wounded in recent Israeli attacks. In response, the Israeli occupation forces announced that they are currently conducting ground raids in southern Lebanon based on precise intelligence. Lebanon is facing a severe humanitarian crisis as over 1.2 million people have been displaced by continued Israeli aggression.
Lebanon's non-profit organizations are working relentlessly to support refugees and displaced citizens in the wake of Israel's ongoing aggression. However, these efforts are severely constrained by limited resources. The continued hostilities have forced approximately 1.2 million Lebanese to flee, with many seeking refuge in Beirut and northern regions over the past 3 weeks. The situation for refugees remains dire, as overcrowded areas struggle to provide basic necessities such as clean water, food, and healthcare. In response to evacuation orders affecting 20 villages in southern Lebanon, many families are fleeing to open public spaces, desperate for safety but facing a shortage of shelter. The Lebanese government estimates that a quarter of the country's population is now displaced. The crisis is also spilling into Syria, with Syrian refugees who had previously sought refuge in Lebanon now fleeing once again. As of October 12th, over 283,000 people have crossed from Lebanon to Syria, with 70% being Syrian nationals and the rest are Lebanese and other nationalities. The UN Refugee Agency, along with other UN agencies and local partners, is stationed at 5 border crossings, providing essential supplies such as water, food, blankets, and mattresses, and arranging transport to safer locations. Heavy bombardments have severely damaged Lebanon's public services and infrastructure. The World Health Organization reports that of 207 primary healthcare centers in conflict zones, 100 have been forced to close due to escalating violence. Lebanon's ongoing economic crisis, marked by high unemployment and soaring prices, has further compounded the challenges faced by displaced families.
And for more analysis, we now move to Riham in our newsroom. To you, Riham.
Thank you, Hela. To help us analyze the current escalating tensions between Iran and Israel after the mutual threats, we're joined from London by the former NATO official, Nicholas Williams. Thank you for joining us on Q. First, could you give us an assessment of how serious is the risk of direct military confrontation between Israel and Iran, given the recent exchanges of threats and given the recent leaks as well?
Well, I think it's still a very high possibility, even probability of Israel attacking Iran in the next week or so. The Israelis are determined to do it, and they have the capability to do it. All that stops them is the concern of the United States not to be dragged into a regional war.
So how significant is Iran's decision to notify the International Atomic Energy Agency about Israel's threats? Could this move impact international diplomacy or prompt a greater global involvement to stop any, actual ground incursions between the two countries?
Well, I think it is significant, and it is significant that the foreign minister of Iran has visited 9 or 10 capitals over the past week or so. They're trying to reassure their Arab neighbors, but they're also giving a warning to the Arab neighbors that they shouldn't cooperate or allow their airspace to attack, or the Israelis to attack Iran. But I don't think Iran can move the diplomatic dial anywhere. It's just the Americans who have the power to influence Iran and Israel.
But I mean, there was the intelligence report that was leaked when it has to do with plans for Israeli attacks on Iran. Do you think this could affect the course of the possibility of attacks by Israel on Iran? Could it push it forward to next month, or is this maybe even stop the attacks itself?
Well, it's difficult to understand how this leak happened. It was a leak of US assessments about how the Israelis might target Iran. And we don't know whether it was, in fact, an attempt by the Americans to warn the Iranians as to the extent of this possible attack, or it was an attempt by the Americans to reduce or influence the Israelis. But I don't think the Israelis, in their current mood, will hesitate to attack Iran. It's just the timing that maybe, as you say, may be affected.
Well, since you talked about like the Israelis and the mood towards attacking Iran, but there's also some sort of internal differences as well. How do you interpret the Israeli cabinet's refusal to authorize Netanyahu and Gallant to attack Iran?
Well, I think it's no one knows exactly what the Israeli cabinet discussed and what the hesitations were. I imagine it was about timing and the extent of targeting, rather than the fact that they will attack. And so I think it's the detail of an attack that the cabinet was worried about and had doubts about, but it's not the fact that the Israelis will attack.
Okay, well, with reports suggesting, as you said, that Israel is preparing an imminent response to Iran's missile attacks, how might NATO allies view such a development, and could it pressure NATO members to take a stance when it comes to the situation in the region?
No, I don't think NATO will get involved, because NATO and the EU, its members, are divided. Some are horrified by what's going on in the Middle East and fear escalation and want the Israelis to have a ceasefire and back down. Others are supportive of Israel and believe that they have the inherent right of self-defense. And so NATO and the EU are paralyzed politically as organizations in this matter.
Okay, well, from your experience at NATO, what lessons can be applied to the situation right now to avoid some sort of military conflict and manage tensions effectively between Israel and Iran? What would you say to this side of the region?
Well, I think intense diplomacy, both with the Israelis and the Iranians, is essential. Unfortunately, Western countries, European countries, have not had any links with Russia, and Russia is some country that can influence Iran. And so the diplomatic system is relatively broken at this critical time. I think you can't prevent this escalation without Russia being involved.
Okay, that was former NATO official Nicholas Williams. Thank you for your insights, and we head back to you now in the studio, Helle.
Thank you very much, Riham. And we move on with our news bulletin. The Lebanese Foreign Ministry has condemned Israeli assaults on UNIFIL centers and Israel's demand for the evacuation of its positions. It emphasized that such attacks are not merely targeting international forces, but represent a blatant violation of international law that could amount to war crimes. The ministry called on the international community to take a firm stance in support of UNIFIL and ensure its operations continue without interference or threats to its security and safety. It also praised the UN forces for their role in maintaining peace and security in southern Lebanon and for enhancing regional stability. Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati has discussed the rapidly evolving situation in Lebanon and Egypt's intensive efforts to contain the crisis in the region with Lebanese Speaker Nabih Berri. The Egyptian Foreign Minister condemned Israel's violations of Lebanese sovereignty and territorial integrity during a phone call with Berri. Abdelati denounced Israeli attacks on the Lebanese army, Lebanese facilities, and UNIFIL forces in southern Lebanon, stressing the need for all parties to adhere to UN Security Council Resolution 1701 in its entirety. U.S. Special Envoy Amos Hochstein has met with Lebanese Speaker of Parliament Nabih Berri during his first visit to the region following Israel's intensified aggression against Lebanon. Hochstein's visit aims to explore diplomatic solutions to the ongoing conflict, with discussions planned with both Israeli and Lebanese officials. His meetings in Lebanon focus on advancing a settlement through U.S. mediation. Hochstein has made several visits to the region in recent months as tensions in southern Lebanon continue to escalate. Now we move to the latest developments in Gaza. The Israeli army has urged displaced people in Jabalia camp to evacuate. This comes amid reports of 18 Palestinians' deaths and injuries to several others in an Israeli strike targeting displaced individuals in Jabalia camp in northern Gaza. The Israeli Air Force has launched a series of airstrikes on western Jabalia, while artillery units targeted the center of the camp. The death toll in Gaza has reached more than 42,600 since Israeli attacks began on October 7, 2023. According to Gaza-based health authorities, in the past 24 hours alone, 84 Palestinians were killed and 158 others wounded, pushing the total number of injured to nearly 100,000. The Gaza government's media office reported that a strike on the residential area of Beit Lahia in northern Gaza resulted in significant casualties. In a statement, Gaza authorities also condemned the United States, Britain, Germany, and France, holding them responsible for what they called terrorist attacks by Israel. The Gaza Strip has been facing a growing risk of famine that could persist through the winter. This is due to severe disruptions in the food supply chain caused by Israel's closure of crossings and the blocking of commercial goods and international aid. According to the World Food Programme and the Food and Agriculture Organization, the latest integrated phase classification report warns of the ongoing risk of famine across the entire Gaza Strip. Moving on to further developments in Africa, we move to Mark. To you, Mark.
Thank you, Hella. Yes, let's get the latest news for Africa. The Tunisian President, Kais Saied, having been re-elected for a second term, took the constitutional oath on Monday. That's today, of course, before the House of Representatives and the National Council of Regions and Districts in a joint session at the Bardo Palace. The 66-year-old Saied secured his second presidential term in the October 6, 2024 election, defeating the challengers. And on October the 11th, the Independent High Authority for Elections announced the final results of the presidential race, confirming Said's victory with 90.69% of the vote in the first round. Said had previously won his first presidential term in the 2019 election. Police clashed with protesters in Mozambique's capital, Maputo, firing tear gas as hundreds took to the streets to protest the death of opposition lawyer Elvino Dias last week. The civil society election observer group, More Integrity, reported that the incident occurred in the Bairro de Coupe neighborhood, where Podemos party representative Paulo Guambe was also killed. Rwanda's Minister of Health, Sabine Nsanzimana, and World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus have provided updates on the recent Marburg virus outbreak in the country. Nsanzimana reported a significant decrease in new infections, stating that the rate has dropped by over 90%. Despite this positive trend, Ghebreyesus emphasized the need for ongoing vigilance. He also warned against imposing travel or trade restrictions, highlighting the potential negative impact on Rwanda's economy.
Vigilance is essential.
The UN's humanitarian organization, OCHA, has reported that over 1 million people in South Sudan have been affected by widespread flooding. More than a quarter of those affected, particularly in the north, have been displaced from their homes due to rising waters. OCHA noted that while the displaced individuals are seeking refuge on higher ground, heavy rains have made it increasingly difficult to deliver aid to those in need. A government relief agency in the east has reported that 112,000 people have lost their homes.
That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here's what we have been covering. Hezbollah announces carrying out 9 operations against Israel along the Lebanese border. Egypt's foreign minister discusses the current escalating tensions with Lebanon's parliament speaker. And the Israeli army urges displaced people. And this concludes our news bulletin for this hour. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Q News EG to stay informed for real-time updates. Connect with us on the UMS digital platform. Watch it. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.